Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at Slocum Joe. That's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first half of the video, and in the second half of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. What this character is going to be about is we are going to take a closer look at one of the, I would say, cooler, unique rewards that you could have gotten so far as legendary weapons when it comes to Fallout 76, which is the Cold Shoulder. It's one of the rewards for this season that we're currently at, and it's relatively early on. It's like rank 5 or 6 or something, so really, yeah, if you start the season and go for the challenges, you should be able to get this thing within an hour or two, and it's surprisingly good. So what it is at its core, it's a double barrel shotgun, but it has the quad legendary effect, which is a really good effect for this weapon. And basically, yeah, if you're going for a double barrel shotgun, chances are your best bet is to go for the quad version, which just gives it 8 shots rather than 2. And yeah, in addition to that, it has one really good effect, which is it adds cryo damage and also the slowing down effect that comes with cryo damage. And when I first saw this weapon, I was pretty surprised, because I thought, yeah, well, the cryo effect on shotguns can be really good, just because you can get a lot of cryo hits on enemies and can freeze them relatively quickly. But I was really surprised when I found out that the cryo damage that was added was not just like 5 points of cryo damage or something, but actually quite a lot. I think it's like 180 or so extra cryo damage, which is pretty insane, to be honest, because cryo damage is the perfect way to offset one of the shotgun's biggest weaknesses, which is when it comes to Fallout 76, shotguns inherently have one big weakness, that is armor penetration. Just because of the fact that the damage of the shotguns is divided equally between all of the pellets, they naturally have a pretty hard time penetrating armor. And yeah, usually you can get around this using VATs. You can offset it with crits. You can get an anti-armor version of the weapon. Arguably, though, at that point, with a double barrel shotgun, you would miss out on quad, which gives you higher DPS overall, in my opinion, on at least in most situations. But the reason cryo damage works so well here is cryo damage is one of the few damage types that even higher level enemies rarely have good resistance to. So armor penetration doesn't matter too much if the enemy doesn't have any armor rating regarding the damage type. So yeah, this 180 damage that you get from cryo damage is really good on this weapon. Now, one big topic I want to address is you saw me attacking some enemies and I did barely any damage, and that's the big thing about this character here, is I actually wanted to use for once the double barrel shotgun with the sawed off barrel. Now, typically when it comes to shotguns especially, there really is no good reason to use anything but the long barrel versions. Now, obviously, if you go for VATs, you want to have aligned, but yeah, maybe true could be nice for shotguns if you're going for a non-VATs approach, like on this occasion. But yeah, as I said, typically, sort of, despite being probably the thing you would like to use on a double barrel shotgun, just because it's so iconic, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because other than most weapons, when it comes to sawed-off shotguns, when it comes to shotguns, they have a crazy damage drop-off. Like you saw here, we were doing just 4 damage, now we're doing like 80 on a headshot. You're losing, I think, it's 90% of damage the moment you get out of range. And shotguns already have low range. I mean, that's not something I would want to complain about. But yeah, the sawed-off version, it gets ridiculous. Like the setup we are using now, we do have the sawed-off barrel, and in addition to that, we do have a muzzle brake. I think we have like 18 range or something. We will see when we look at the weapon later, but yeah, it's ridiculously small. So basically, you have to be within melee range to do any noteworthy damage to enemies. However, the moment that's happening, you really can do a whole lot of damage, as you saw there. Now, another big thing about this weapon is, and why yet again cryo damage works so well with shotguns in my opinion, is because while shotguns have pretty big weaknesses in this game, I really like the fact that they have great utility. The fact that the Enforcer perk makes you able to cripple enemies very effectively with shotguns. You can really how should I say, you can control fights very well, just because you can cripple enemies, and a lot of, especially the tougher enemies, are melee enemies only, so you can basically just immobilize them and take them out of the picture. And yeah, when it comes to this particular shotgun here, the fact that we do have cryo damage adds another big advantage to your control over enemies by just freezing them. So even if you encounter an enemy that's tough, by the way, I'm not quite sure why the screen is so blurry, was a glitch basically. Yeah, back to the topic anyways. Even if you encounter an enemy that doesn't go down fast, like you saw there, even a Scorch Beast went down pretty quickly. Even if you encounter a tougher target, it doesn't matter, you can just grind them down relatively easily, just because they won't be able to do a whole lot of damage to you while they are constantly being frozen. So yeah, I hope we find something tougher that survives, but I guess at that point we won't really be able to show off that particular advantage of the weapon. Other than that, yet more praise for the weapon itself. It has a unique skin, which is always something I really like. And not only a skin, but it also even has this cool little cryo effect on it. So overall, I really have to say this is how Bethesda should more often do legendary unique rewards. This really feels like a unique weapon. It has an effect that you can't otherwise get on the weapon. It has a unique skin. It's really cool. Also, it's not something stupid that might be unique but bad. So yeah, I really like it. It's one of the best rewards I think there was ever on any of the scoreboards. And yeah, not a whole lot to say here. Now here we have this tougher target, and we're really lucky here with Quick Hands, where we were getting it proc twice in a row, so we actually had like 24 shots. 3 times 8 is 24, right? I'm not good at math, sorry. And yeah, you see there, we are overall pretty tanky. Now one thing I need to mention here, or feel the need to mention, is this weapon can perform even better in VATS. Like, I'm a big fan of VATS playstyle on shotgunners, and most of the times I do this. And basically on my main character I run this particular weapon currently, but with pretty much the build that I used for the Union Seeker, so VATS shotgunner, and it's an absolute beast. The DPS is even higher, but since the weapon is so good, I felt like I could finally do something like this here, where whenever I have the chance to make a shotgunner that doesn't use VATS, I really like to do so. And yeah, on this occasion it worked out very well in my opinion. Just keep in mind, you can even up your performance by using VATS. Now, obviously, if you were to use VATS, power armor is a pretty hot topic when it comes to VATS, so you would need to approach the character a little differently. But yeah, this way here we can use power armor, we can be very tanky. To be more precise, we are using an Overeater set of power armor with the Sprinkles paint, as you can probably tell. And yeah, we are a super tanky character. We rarely have to rely on using stim packs or something. Basically every single fight we will survive, and we will heal back to 100% of health. We have good damage output. We have good crowd control. We basically have everything. This is a really good character in my opinion. It is a ton of fun. It's pretty ammo efficient. Shotgun shells can be farmed really easily and really efficiently in expeditions or in daily ops, so it's a really good all-rounder. You don't have to keep up constantly repairing your your equipment, because both your armor and your weapon will last very long, despite not being spec'd into it, not using gunsmith or anything like that. So yeah, I was really surprised how ridiculously good this character turned out to be. It's a ton of fun. You can do pretty much every single bit of content. Now, the only thing that would probably challenge you a little bit is decryption daily ops, because you have to get, as I said, really close to an enemy. Now, talking about getting close to an enemy, one thing I haven't really shown off so far is just because we often have to sprint up to enemies. I do have the Pain Train perk, so if we sprint into an enemy, we can damage them by sprinting into them with our power armor. And yeah, these guys are a little bit too agile to really show that off, but yeah, here it was. So oftentimes when you sprint into an enemy, you will already do damage before you start to shoot them, and it just all works together really well. In addition to that, I have Tesla coils on my power armor. That way, since we are so close to enemies before we do significant damage, we will, in addition to all of our damage from the shotgun and from Pain Train, we will also do some passive damage with our power armor. So you see there's a whole lot of stuff going on that works together really well. And you can also play this very well in third person. It also helps reduce the recoil of the weapon even further. I find that it is easy to control, or let's say easier for motion sickness and everything, because in first person your screen will shake a lot while firing this weapon. In third person, that's not a problem at all. And talking about recoil, that's something I failed to mention earlier. When I was talking about the sawn-off barrel, basically the whole point I was trying to make is the only reason why you would want to use something like a sawed-off barrel is it significantly helps with recoil. And in addition to that, we have the type of barrel that helps with recoil. So we have stabilized stuff, we have a stabilized stock, we have a stabilized barrel, stabilized sawed-off barrel, and we do have the muzzle brake. So we really take down our range with this weapon. I mean, you could run this with like 80 range, 50 range, something like that, which would at that point be quite more usable at mid-ranges, but at the cost of our range, we can really make the weapon way more usable. Now, this wouldn't matter if you were in VATS. Obviously, their recoil doesn't really matter too much once you are in VATS, but yeah, if you want to use this outside of VATS, it's just way easier to use it like that, and I really like it. So yeah, you can just grind down enemies really easily. Now, one thing in third person is I tend to miss a lot of my pellets, just because, yeah, you have to get used to it. I bet if you're playing this in third person for a while, you get the hang of it. But yeah, if you really hit these guys in the chest or in the head, you can take most of the enemies out with 2 well-placed shots. As I said, in third person, I often miss a few pellets and therefore need like 3 shots, but it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter too much. And one additional effect the weapon has, I haven't really talked about that, is it also does extra damage against cryptids, which obviously is nice, especially if you're fighting a sheep squatch. That's where it comes in really handy. But yeah, yet again, by the way, another unique legendary effect. So this really is a great weapon. And yeah, there's not a whole lot to say here. I just like the weapon very well. The whole build turned out great. I really love it. And yeah, I think we're done here. Not a single point in the game where in the whole video where we were struggling or to stay alive or something. So yeah. One thing to mention is, in order to keep my thirst and hunger meter up during the video, in order to get the benefit from our Overeater's armor, I was using the survival stim, or survival cam, I think it's called, survival syringe, there it is, that you can get from a legendary perk. Obviously in Fallout 76, both both food and water are really easy to come by. You don't need this, but I find it easy, and whenever I go for something like an Overeater's build, I tend to use this perk just because, yeah, it's convenient, but you could definitely live without it, just drinking and eating otherwise. So yeah, that was the gameplay part of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. Obviously, when it comes to this weapon, pretty much every single YouTuber that covers the game has made a video about it because it's so cool. But yeah, I thought I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I hope I have achieved that. I hope you'll like the video, and yeah, now we're going to take a look at mutations and everything. So starting off with our mutations here. Nothing too crazy going on. We do have bird bones. This is basically just here so we don't stagger when landing with our power armor after every single jump. So yeah, it just reduces our fall speed. The extra agility is nice. We're using dodgy in order to be more tanky. So in that regard, agility helps. But otherwise, it's really just for the falling speed. Then we do have grounded. Simply put, we're not using an energy weapon, and therefore grounded doesn't have a debuff for us. Arguably, energy resistance isn't necessary, especially since we are in power armor, for two reasons. We already have very high resistance, so 100 extra doesn't do too much, and we do have electric absorption, so energy damage in and of itself isn't the problem for us. But as I said, it's pretty much no debuff at all because we're not using any energy weapon. If you would want to use a Gauss shotgun, for example, in addition to the weapon we are having here, then you would want to live without grounded, but at that point you would in general need some changes to the build, or want some. Then we do have healing factor. I mentioned it during the video. We are tanky enough so that we pretty much never have to use a Stimpack during fights. Pretty much every single fight you do survive with this build, and this just makes it so whenever the fight is done, we are back to full health in no time at all. Then we do have marsupial, jump height, carry weight, obviously always great. Scaly skin. This is pretty much exactly what I had to say about grounded. The 50 extra resistances are not necessary at all. We could definitely live without it. However, the debuff of minus 12 AP is pretty much negligible at our point, as we only use it for sprinting around or dodgy. So yeah, we can definitely live with 12 less AP, and therefore we take the extra resistance even if it's not necessary. Then we do have Speed Demon. This is a very important one. Obviously, faster movement speed is nice. I pretty much have Speed Demon on every single character, but with a weapon like this, even with the quad effect, you will find yourself reloading the weapon quite a lot, and therefore, yeah, having faster reload speed is nice. And lastly, I added Unstable Isotope just because it has no downside. We often are in melee range. We will often find enemies get a melee hit in on us, and we have a chance to explode in this kind of mushroom cloud. It's just flavor. You never rely on it for damage or anything, but it's nice to have, I guess. And yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to our special stats. Now, in addition to that, we are now going to take a look at our equipment. Here it is, the Beast Cold Shoulder. Not a whole lot left to say here. Now, one thing to mention is I do have the Prime Receiver. You can pretty much achieve the exact same outcome that we had in the video with the Hardened Receiver. It has the same damage. The only difference here is that we can do a little bit of additional damage to Scorched and Scorched Beast, but even with the Hardened Receiver, you shouldn't have too much trouble. I decided to go for the Prime Receiver because when it comes to shotguns, I rarely find myself crafting the ammunition. I just craft like 200 or 300 shots and then farm them in daily ops or expeditions. So yeah, that's basically the whole reason I went with it, just because why not. I mentioned that I had the stabilized stock, which was kind of a lie. I have the forceful stock, but the forceful stock also reduces recoil, but in addition to that, it gives you extra bashing damage. Now, the bashing damage is completely irrelevant to us. The reason I use this, though, is it increases your condition by quite a lot, which is not something that the modification states, but you can see it on the condition bar. And this alone, coupled with the fact that shotguns tend to break very slowly, makes it so we really don't have to repair this weapon very often. We do have a reflex sight. It just helps to reduce the spread of the weapon when we aim down sights a little bit. It's not necessary. You can definitely go with standard or glow sights if you want to, but on this occasion I felt like it was fine to use it. And lastly, we have the muzzle brake. Helps with control and yeah, helps with the recoil of the weapon, basically, yet further reducing our range. And as you can see there, range 18, it's pretty much melee range. I think it's like a little bit more, but you saw it during the video. It works fine. You have the time, you have the survivability to get close to enemies and just grind them down. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Also, there's a few cool skins for the shotgun now. There's another cool one that's coming on the scoreboard, so you can go for whatever you like here. I find it great. It worked well. Worked also. Finally, it's a weapon that kind of worked with the Sprinkles power armor paint. I wanted to use that power armor paint for a while, but I never really found anything working. The only other thing is I was thinking about was using a cryolator, so kind of a frosting, icing theme going on. But I made a few videos about cryolators. I didn't really know what to add at that point, so yeah, finally having an icy weapon, icing, frosting, I think you get the point here. So yeah, that's it when it comes to the weapon. Now, in addition to that, we have our set of power armor here, and we have the internal database just because there was nothing desperately necessary in terms of modifications for our helmet, so I might as well increase our intelligence a little bit. You will see that intelligence is one of our dump stats, so increasing it a little bit due to passive means like this helps with getting a bit more experience. Now, we do have the headlamp, which is blue, works well. I also had the purple one, also worked well, but ultimately I decided for the blue one. We have calibrated shocks on our legs. Obviously, there's nothing else we need. And other than that, there really isn't a whole lot going on with this power armor. I wanted to have overeaters on every single piece. The only noteworthy exception is probably that we do have one piece that has a chance to deal frost damage to melee attackers, which obviously fits the theme relatively well and works well with the weapon. But other than that, I just didn't care too much. We have one AP refresh piece, which was nice, and yeah, the Tesla coils on our power armor piece. I didn't find that any other modification was desperately necessary here. You could add a jetpack, but yeah, I felt like the passive damage from Tesla coils really worked well with the idea that we had to get very close to enemies. So yeah, this in combination with paint rain and our low range weapon makes for a really tough fight for enemies that come into low range. And yeah, that's it when it comes to our equipment. Taking a look at our perks. Now, one thing I wanted to mention about the equipment, in a perfect world, if I had to grind this armor out more, I would love to have some pieces of power armor with cryo resistance, just because thematically it would work fine. I didn't decide to grind that out just because, yeah, it didn't feel necessary, because I knew due to the route we were taking during the video that we wouldn't encounter anything with cryo damage. I'm not quite sure, other than floaters, if there even is something with cryo damage in the game at this point. I can't think of something, but you get the point. Anyways, talking about the perks, we have 15 in strength, maxed out all the shotgunner perks. In addition to that, we have scattershot. This is quite important, just to yet again increase our reload speed with the weapon a little bit. Shotgunner obviously just gives us more damage. And lastly, we do have paint rain. I said it during the video, it's not necessary, you can definitely live without it. It's something that will naturally benefit you every now and then. But if you find that you're not utilizing it, probably a good pick would be something like the Traveling Pharmacy perk. I just happen to not carry around a lot of chems because I found that they weren't too useful on this character, so I could live without it. But if you have problems with carry weight, yeah, keep in mind, just use Traveling Pharmacy instead of Paint Rain here and you will probably be fine. Then we do have Perception, pretty low. The only thing necessary here, since we're not using VETs, was Skeet Shooter, which reduces the spread of the weapon. Gives us extra accuracy, which we are not utilizing, but yeah, the reduced spread really makes this thing way more usable and is kind of necessary, especially with the sawed-off barrel. Then we do have Endurance of 9. mid-range to high range, I would say. Oftentimes endurance can be a dumpster in Fallout 76. On this occasion I wanted to have at least some going on. Ideally I would have liked to have higher endurance, but there really is a lack of useful perks for this build, so I went with 9 endurance, Life Giver for some extra HP, Photosynthetic, this was already kind of a stretch, it's not too necessary, but we do have some health regen going on during the day. Obviously not necessary outside of a fight, just because we already have the healing factor mutation, but Photosynthetic also gives you some kind of healing, even if it's not much during fights, whenever it's 6 a.m. between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And lastly, Fireproof. This is universally just good, so not a lot to say here. And this is something I forgot during the video. This character is designed to be a team character, so we do have Inspirational here, Strange in Numbers, and Tenderizer. Now the Strange in Numbers we wouldn't have seen in action anyways, because if I were on a team I would be on one by myself on my server, so this doesn't really matter. Inspirational, since we're having so little intelligence, as I said, we increased it a little bit with our helmet modification, and yeah, this is the other perk that we use in order to get a little bit more experience. Whenever we are on a team we will get 15% more experience. And lastly, we do have Tenderizer for extra damage after we attack an enemy. So yeah, pretty high charisma, higher than usual, but I thought that every single bit of these was necessary. And as I said, I was playing this video without being in a team. Obviously these perks wouldn't have made too much of a difference, but one perk we do have when we will look at the legendary perks will make a difference, but we're getting to that. In terms of intelligence, as I said, it's our dumpster. I went with rank 3 of power user here. Even that is not really necessary, you can definitely live without it here. I found it useful because dodgy can drain your power, your fusion cores relatively quickly. So yeah, power user isn't lost here, but keep in mind it's not too necessary. For once I don't have gunsmith, just because yeah, the condition of the weapon holds together really great. Shotgunners, yeah, shotguns in and of itself have high durability, so this in combination with the forceful stock really make it so you don't have to worry about the condition of your weapon too much. Then we do have agility, relatively high for a character that doesn't use VATS, but as it often happens, agility is just a very useful stat within this game, so even on a character like this where you're basically not utilizing agility or action points by any meaningful degree, you still benefit from quite a few things here. Now the most important one is Enforcer. This just makes it so you can cripple enemies very effectively. Arguably using the cold shoulder you could live without it, just because you have a lot of control over enemies just by the fact that you can freeze them already, so crippling them in addition to that isn't too useful. The main use here is when you're fighting Scorch Beast, and in this situation it's very useful because since Scorch Beasts are airborne, you will do pretty much no damage whatsoever due to the low range of the weapon, so you really want to cripple their limbs and force them to land, and therefore yeah, Enforcer really good. But even then, it's always a great pick whenever you go for a shotgunner. Then we do have Adrenaline, and this is just a universally good perk, so not a lot to say here. Extra damage when killing enemies within a certain time, so yeah, happens all of the time and really works out well. And lastly, we do have Dodgy, single-handedly one of the best defensive perks whenever you're not desperately relying on action points, which is the case in this situation. So pretty much all of our action points can go directly into defense due to Dodgy. And yeah, that leaves us with Luck. We do have Class Freak here, Starch Genes. Starch Genes, obviously we want to keep our mutations, not get any new ones. Class Freak wouldn't have been desperately necessary here, just because yeah, none of our mutations really have debuffs that cripple our character, so you could definitely live without Class Freak. However, I felt like it was nice to have. And lastly, we do have Quick Hands here. Now, for a while I ran with Ricochet rather than Quick Hands, just to yet again increase our survivability and tankiness a little bit. But we were so tanky to begin with, between using Overeater's power armor and using Dodgy. you really don't need to do a whole lot more when it comes to survivability. So I found that ultimately I had more benefit from using quick hands, and you saw it there when we were fighting the glowing ghoul. It can be really handy, and in day-to-day use it won't be too noticeable, but whenever you are fighting something tougher, it's bound to proc sooner or later, and it really increases your DPS by quite a lot if it does. So yeah, that being said, all we're left with is legendary perks, and this is the one I was talking about earlier, or mentioning, taking one for the team. So if we would have recorded this video being on a team, we arguably would have done a lot more damage in a few situations. Against the Scorch Beast, for example, whenever an enemy attacks you, you do 40% more damage. And yeah, this can yet again increase your DPS quite a lot, but as you saw during the video, there was no single point where we felt underpowered or something. So even without taking one for the team, performance was great. Keep in mind though, you can perform even better when being on a team, which I just forgot to do. Then we do have electric absorption. Every single time you're using power armor, this should be one of your priorities. It's just such a good perk, giving you a chance to heal whenever you are attacked with an energy attack, and also recharging your fusion cores in the process. So yeah, just very good perk for legendary for power armor. Then we do a Funky Dots and Sizzling Sky style, both at rank 3. This just, yeah, for once I didn't feel like I needed to increase any of my stats with legendary agility, strength, whatever. So I went with all useful tankiness perks, and Funky Dots, arguably the best of these. Poison resistance really great when you're fighting something like a Mirelurk Queen, or when you're doing daily ops where enemies leave poison behind. Really good perk. Obviously maxed out would be better, but 150 poison resistance is already great. Sizzling style, this is even a little bit more situational in my opinion. Very rare situations where you will have a lot of damage from fire, but yeah, whenever it does happen, Sizzling Style can help you out a lot. Then we do have Power Sprinter. Now this really is not too important, but it reduces the action point cost when sprinting in power armor, and it can help because whenever we are shot at, we will use a lot of action points due to using dodgy, and this makes it so with even relatively little action points left, we can sprint into enemies and use our Pain Train perk. So that's basically just the whole reason why Power Sprinter is here. And lastly, Survival Shortcut, already mentioned it pretty quickly. This just makes it very convenient to keep our thirst and hunger meters satisfied. You can definitely live without it. We're not looking for the healing aspect of the survival chem, so it's just to keep us, yeah, our hunger and thirst satisfied. And yeah, that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.